All right, we get asked for this video a lot. We're gonna make one. We're putting a rubber epdm dry deck system on this steel frame. So these boys are creating some trapezoid shapes. We got the double chalk line going. They're going 24 inches on one side, 18 inches on the other. So on our 16 on center steel joist, the side of the house will be stretched tight. The side of at the beam will droop. We'll add another small piece of rubber on the outside of the cantilever that pitches back onto the main bladder. So pretty much they're just snapping out. They're going every other, so that way they remain straight with their piece of rubber. So wood joists, you're just laying your pieces, you're tacking them to your joist with staples, and then taping over your seams and screwing your decking through it. I do like a piece of double-sided tape between the two layers of rubber where they overlap, regardless of the joist structure, because it creates a nice little sandwich to seal your screws as they go through so you don't get any drips. Here, we're using double-sided tape on the joist to put the bladder on it. Then we're doing another side of double-sided tape over the first piece to lap the second piece on. So you do have to use cleaner or acetone. Just hit the edges of the rubber where we're going to apply the tape so it sticks good. So they're just cleaning the edges of the membrane, and then we're going to roll out our tape, top of the joist, start sticking these things down. Wiping down the top of the joist, throwing our double-sided tape on top. That'll be our first stick. One more layer over that. Yeah. And then we'll apply our second layer epdm over the first one. Just lap every seam as we go. So how much pitch do we put on this bladder? How do we calculate the width that we cut the beam side of this rubber to get that concave pointing down? Well, that's usually driven by the joist height and also your mid-span blocking. The steel has the blocking attached underneath. It only protrudes 2 inches up into the frame, so we have 4 inches in the middle to run. Now, say you're using a 2x10, you're gonna have 9¼ inch joist. Then whether you use a 2x6 or a 2x8 for your mid-span blocking, that's gonna be half point, and then you're gonna be able to do double that because you don't want that bladder sitting on that mid-span block to create a bump. So for our return, our outside rim, we cut a piece that's just long enough to hang over the main bladder. We'll push it down and form a pitch in each bay. It's gonna crown the outside of it from it flexing, and then we'll just trim that off straight with the rim joist. Instead of having to make a bunch of individual bladders, we'll release this tape and then pretty much just start at the middle and just put a little bit of pitch so it lays flat on the joist. You want enough that that leaves can, anything that can go through the decking can go through the bladder. And you pretty much just start in the middle and work your way out. All right, so we've covered our top seam with G-tape. This is a specific G-tape for epdm, but really we just do that so if there's a lot of rain happening, that splash up doesn't work into this seam. Because we have a pretty good lap joint, we're not really too concerned with water going through, except when these troughs fill up when we have a really heavy rain. We'll get seepage into that seam if it's not taped. What Zach's doing now is he's applying a coat of primer to our perimeters and the center seam. So he's just got some rubber primer, he's wiping that on. We're gonna let that tack up. So when that's dry to the touch, we're gonna do our perimeters up against the house with cured cover tape. So we're using it for this breaker transition as well, just because it's a big flat surface. So this cover tape will give us a really good gasket for our railing posts, for our breaker board, and then we're gonna go up the house as well. So we'll put a piece of cover tape up against the house that will 90 degree and turn up that sidewall to get flashed over. So that's how we finish off the perimeters, and then this thing will be ready to put decking on. So this is that flashing that we put in. It's just a 3x3 metal flashing. We got it tucked up behind the siding and sealed underneath the door. And then we'll go over the edge of that with cover tape. So we've primed the surface of that flashing and the epdm membrane on that flat surface. That's gonna be our border picture frame. All right, there she is, all set. I'm gonna just throw a little bit of silicone in that corner. Got our door flashed over. All right, we're ready for decking, but first, I don't have a clip, but you're gonna flood this bladder with the hose really well and make sure you don't have any leaks and it's functioning properly. We're using camo wedge clips and screws and plugs for our perimeters like typical decking installation. You can use screws and plugs for the whole thing. You might get a little extra protection. We've never had an issue with the wedge clip. So we'll also get a gutter company to mount a 6-inch commercial gutter on the backside of that drop beam for the bladder to drain into and then route a downspout. If you're gonna do a flush beam, it's pretty much the same thing. You're just gonna want your flush beam or trim detail to be lower than the joist. So you have space to mount that gutter on the backside and you can't see it from the front. Please, if you have any questions, drop them in the comments, throw us a like, sub the channel. We do appreciate the support. Thanks for joining us.